Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Meg and Maggie podcast. I realize I always say the exact same thing when I intro the episodes, but it's okay. It's just what comes out. But today, we are going to be talking about apologizing. So
Mm,
the other day, I was at a coffee shop with a friend. Her and I are both entrepreneurs that work from home. And if you are an entrepreneur that works from home, you know that it's pretty lonely,
mhm.
especially if you're by yourself all the time, which Meg is now learning how lonely it can be. But anyway, her and I have started to meet up and just do our own work. Right. But like sit together and chat, which is really
Mm.
nice. And she was telling me how she realized how much she apologizes for everything for no reason, right? And so how, she was aware of that now and how she wanted to really stop doing that, right? And immediately her and I were talking about it and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm texting Megan. We're going to do a podcast episode about this." And she was like, "Do it. Like this is going to be
Yeah,
great." And I was like, "This is going to be such a great episode." So here we are.
there's so many people that do it, and we're talking about over apologizing specifically. We love if you give a healthy apology, okay?
Yeah.
When you are genuinely sorry for something and you apologize for it, beautiful, good. Keep doing that. The over apologies though of something as simple as like if someone was like, "Hey, can you do this?" and you're like, "No, I'm so sorry, I can't." Or, you're in the grocery store and you bump into someone like, I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too far, but like just being really careful with the word sorry.
Well, for me, yeah, what I think of when over apologizing is the thing that comes to mind first for me, because I struggled with this for a long time, was when ordering food at a restaurant. Okay, I have a dairy allergy. And I only started respecting this dairy allergy in what year was it? Maybe 2019. And when I made that change and decided I was not going to eat dairy anymore because it makes me feel like crap and I should probably stop doing that. I was so self-conscious when I went out to eat because I was like, oh my God, like I'm so annoying. The waiter is definitely annoyed with me. I'm asking so many questions. I have so many
Mhm.
special needs, blah, 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 blah. I can't have this. Can I have this instead? Can you tell me the ingredients of this? Does your feta cheese have cow's milk or only go in
And
sheep's
you could
milk? You
just
know what I
hear
mean? And it's
yourself,
like,
you can yeah.
I have all these questions and I am constantly like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to ask this. I'm so sorry, blah, 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 blah. Or instead of saying sorry, I just don't stand up for myself and I don't ask the question. And then I feel like crap because I ate something I shouldn't have had. Right. And so it's like, what, wait, why am I sorry? This person is literally paid to bring me the food that I ask for. Why
Right.
am I sorry?
Yeah, and I think there's such a way of, like I love that we're having this conversation, and I don't want people to think that we're like, "Stop apologizing altogether," but I think there's a balance of, like, when you've met someone for me, it was when I've met someone who's really confident and really, like, you can tell they're full of themselves in the right way. Like, people are
Okay.
always like, "You don't wanna be full of yourself." I'm like, "I wanna be full of myself,"
Heck
because if
yeah.
you're full of yourself, you're literally let's get weird, you're full of who you are. Like, you know who the fuck you are, so you're full of it, okay?
Yes.
When you're full of who you
Yes.
are, right? We need more people to be full of themselves. I want every single person around me to be full of themselves because then you're more secure and you talk different and you stand different and whatever. So when I had met people who didn't do that, I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I want that energy." Also, can we do a side note, everyone? We are now going to be on YouTube more consistently. So as we're talking now, I'm noticing myself being like, "Oh my God, I always play with my nose. Oh my God, I like pick my nose. Oh my gosh, I do this." It's really funny. So if you're watching this on YouTube in the future, it'll always be like this.
Yeah.
Okay? So get used to that.
So
As you
before
were
we
talking, I was like,
yeah,
we used to like zone out and like do whatever. And now I'm like, we're on camera, but I
it's
can't help
fine.
it.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's
You're
fun.
gonna see me, like, take notes and things like that. We were talking just before we hit record, we were like, you know you said, Meg, you're like, "I thought I was gonna wanna look nice for this now that we're doing video, but actually, no, I don't."
I don't care. I don't care. Like I do care, but I don't care. Like you get us how you get us and our conversations unfold. Anyways,
And
back
we're
to
not
over
gonna
apologizing.
apologize for it, okay? We're not.
That's a great point. We're not gonna apologize for it. Um, that's so funny. Someone's gonna comment and be like, "You're literally like playing with your dogs." Like we both have dogs. Like they're going to like say things like that. And I'm going to be like, yes, welcome
Yes.
to the Maggie podcast.
Yeah. I only have sleeping dogs right now, but I'm sure they will be on the couch behind me soon.
You'll see them appear at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like with this concept, when I used to over apologize, I would do it specifically for questions. So, like you were saying, I would always feel guilty for asking questions. And because we went to school for, all of us go to school for so long when you live here in the United States, you've been in a structured setting where you raise your hand to ask questions a lot. And I think you and I, Maggie, are similar in the sense that we are very, very curious people. So you can imagine that I always had questions. And then when my questions were not met with acceptance, if you will, or my questions were not welcomed, then I just stopped asking questions. And I then had a professor in college, like my first year of graduate school. And I forget what she made us do, but whenever we'd say sorry, because we all did, we were all like graduate school, like people pleasers, like kiss ups, like trying to like make it in this field. And she was so confident and so fucking awesome. Her name was Laura. And every time we would say sorry, I forget what she did, but she reinforced the behavior of don't say that.
Mm-hmm.
Do not apologize, period. And that was like boot camp for me because think about it, it happened all the time, every time in class. Sorry, I have a sorry, I have a question. Sorry, I have a question. It was constant. So because she was from the psych world, she would, use positive reinforcement. Like, she broke that habit for me. Shout out to Laura Spenceley,
Laura,
my
we love
beautiful
you.
professor.
We love you, Laura. Oh, it's so important that we have people that do that, right? It's so important that we have people that shine the light on these things, right? Because yes, we can come to the realization ourselves, and a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's really hard to shine the light on things that you need to work on yourself, right? It's really hard. And most people, even if they have the ability to do that, don't want to do that because it sucks, right? To constantly be like, oh, I did it wrong again. Oh, I did it wrong again. Or like,
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have stood up for myself that way. Or why did I apologize? Like as simply as that. It's like, why did I say I'm sorry? Right. My basketball girls this past season, they would come to me and they'd be like, so
I
I'm
love the acting.
sorry, but like, do you think, and I'm like, can you try again? Try, go walk away and come back and try again.
Oh my
And just
gosh.
ask me the question. Like, what is your question? That's it. Ask the question, right? Because you don't need to be sorry for having a question. When people say like there's no stupid questions, that's really true, because if you don't understand something, you can't move on from there, right? So how can a question be stupid? You cannot progress if you are missing a piece of information.
Two things. One, I love that we're on video because that acting of your girls right now was fantastic. And I think you should act out more things more often.
The other day, a friend told me that I was a good actor. I was like, really? Okay.
That you're very animated and it's really good. And you won't be able to get Botox or anything one day because you have very good expressions. So we have to keep you animated like that.
Okay.
Um,
The
that was
eyebrows
awesome.
move a lot.
Your eyebrows move a lot. That is amazing that you, just like my professor did to me, you did with your basketball girls. Three things. That was a compliment. The next one is that I love that what you're doing is bringing me into your mind or into anyone's mind of what it's like to over apologize. So you just demonstrated it for us with the self-talk of that's coming from a place. So when you are over apologizing or you're saying, I'm so sorry about this or sorry this, what's happening in your head is, God, I'm so stupid. What is wrong with me? Why can't I get it? Da-da-da. Like, I got to apologize because there's something wrong with me, right? I know that because I was scarred from that when I was younger. And I mean that in a genuine place that when I was in school, school did not come easy to me. It was hard for me to understand things. And I'm still like this as an adult. I am a very big picture learner in the sense that if I don't see the full picture, I don't care. And I used to think that was my downfall because in school, you don't see the big picture. You're learning algebra and you're like, why? right? Or you're learning about one book in particular and you're like, why? Like to me, it didn't make sense. Therefore, I wasn't interested. Therefore, I was in AIS all the time, which there's nothing wrong with AIS. It's, if you live in New York, like that's where you go for like, extra help and things like that. And if you have like an IEP or 504 plan, or look at me putting my school psych hat back on, um, there's nothing wrong with that by any means. It's something that for me, I always felt so insecure about. And it really stuck with me until I got a little bit older, in the sense that, no, Meg, you're just a systems level type girl. Hence why you're in entrepreneurship. You're a big picture, big idea type person, but who you were around and the experiences you had made you feel like there was something wrong with you. And so you internalize that, right? Therefore, you apologize for it. Like, I wanted to bring the psychology to that, because any of you who are like, I just got to stop over apologizing. Well, it's not that easy. Why are you over apologizing? When
Mhm.
you go to say sorry next time, when you go to apologize for something that you really didn't do anything wrong, right? We apologize when we've done something wrong and we've sat with it. And we then apologize to remediate, hopefully, what we did wrong. But when you're apologizing for things like Maggie's saying of asking a question, you did nothing wrong. Why are you saying sorry to ask the question? So when you go to do that next time, I want to challenge you to get curious about that. And instead of just being like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, and beating yourself up, what were your thoughts leading up to that? Because that's a behavior. So what was like it's called in the psych world, antecedent before the behavior?
Fancy.
I know. Antecedent is like what led up to it. So get curious about that. When you're about to go apologize, what's going through your head? So for me, for example, when I go to ask a question, here we go again. Everyone else has it figured out and I don't know. Some reason I can't get it. I can't figure it out. I better apologize. That's mine, right? And it changes on the setting, but what is yours? Because then it'll be easier to break that behavior when you can understand where it's coming from.
I wanted to tell this story I'm about to tell anyway.
Mm.
However, now with what you just shared, it really fits in better.
Ooh.
Because a lot of the reason why I apologize is because I just exist, like because I'm taking up space. Like I
Mm.
feel like I'm in someone's way. Right. Okay. I'm sure you relate to that. Like
I was about to say that's a
people,
whole mood. That's not a mood that any
right?
of us should have, but I feel like especially our age group in particular, I
Yeah.
can see so many people being like, yeah.
Hold on. Can we just pause here for a second? Yes, that's me too. Yeah. So usually I apologize because I exist, because I'm here.
Mm.
I feel like I'm in someone's way. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not good enough to be here. I don't have anything valuable to say, whatever. It all kind of stems from me just existing. Right. So the
We
other
need to take a
day,
moment of silence, Maggie.
okay, moment of
We need to
silence.
get Cosmos was on. So if you go back and listen to Creating Cosmos, Creating Habits with Cosmos Fitzpatrick, that is Maggie's husband. When he was on, we were laughing with him about how much slower pace the episode was. And like, it was beautiful and we breathed. I think he even used fancy words of like, let's let that sentence breathe for a minute. And we were like,
Yeah.
what
Oh,
do you mean?
pause.
We don't do
Right.
that.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm like a million miles an hour. He said to me after our conversation, he was like, so I normally listen to podcasts on like 1.25 speed, but I don't listen to your podcast on 1.25 speed because I already feel like I'm listening to it on
Wasn't he saying to us
1.25
that one
speed.
time he checked? I think
Yes,
he was saying on the podcast that one time he was listening to our podcast and he checked if the speed
was
was zoomed
faster.
up and he was like, no, that's just them. So,
Yep.
anyways, I wanted to say that and it reminded me of that episode. Go back and listen to it. Maggie and I are always 100 miles an hour. And what you just said is so powerful. I want to take a moment for it because how twisted is that?
Yeah.
How twisted
It's
is that a lot of us feel like that?
it's so messed up. Like when I take a step back and I think about it and I'm like, hold on. I am apologizing for being
Right.
what?
Right.
Where did I learn that and why? And that's bad. Like, why? What?
Mm.
Okay. So now I'm going to go on.
Okay. Happy we gave
Last
that.
week, I went to Nashville to visit my sister
Mm.
and we went to Lululemon because there's no Lululemon here. And I like Lululemon. So we went to Lululemon and it was like maybe 6:30 when I was in the checkout line and they closed at 7. And so I'm in the checkout line. I, just put my clothes on the counter, checking out, talking with the cashier guy. My sister's standing next to me. And I was like, oh, by the way, I'm a trainer. Can you give me the information about your discount? Because Lululemon has a discount for trainers. They have discounts for lots of people. But I just learned about this. So I was
Mhm.
like, can you give me information on this? Like, I would like to sign up. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure. If you just scan this QR code, it'll pull up the website, but I'll just put in the discount for you today, like, because you have to sign up and it takes a couple days, whatever. I was like, okay, great. This is
Yeah, you're like,
wonderful. I'm going to get a
perfect.
nice little discount today. There's a
Yep.
guy in line behind me. Okay. And I got in line. Okay. So picture the checkout desk is directly in front of you, wherever you are.
Okay.
Right.
I'm gonna like close
Okay.
my eyes. Mhm.
I'm coming from the right side and I get in line. The door is on the left side. This guy walks in the door and I just like literally a quarter of a second beat him to the line.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm
Were you
first
in
and he's
Green Hills,
second.
by the way?
No,
Okay,
we
sorry.
were
Go ahead.
in,
I'm moving to Nashville, everyone. The Green Hills one. It's in a strip by Whole Foods. You would know. It's cute Lululemon. Anyways,
I think we were in Brentwood or maybe Franklin. I don't know, somewhere like
you
that.
were probably in Green Hills. Were you on a
Maybe.
little strip that had a Shake Shack and then an Anthropology and then a Lululemon?
I know it had a Lululemon and a Whole Foods. So maybe.
You were in Green Hills, which is my favorite little strip anywhere, anyways. And I
Oh,
know Amy goes to Green Hills all the time. So anyways, I'm picturing the Green Hills Lululemon because I know the desk perfectly and I had to ask that.
okay. So I beat this
Okay.
guy in line by like a quarter of a second. I'm first, he's second. Okay. Very
Okay.
important. I'm first, he's second. Okay. So
Their
I'm checking
child
out.
is coming out so strong right now. If you know Maggie, I mean, you know her through the podcast, your 7-year-old self.
Yeah, I'm first in line. You're last. Okay. Okay. So I'm checking out. I'm talking to the guy. I'm like scanning the code. I'm like, actually, I'm going to take a picture of this so that way I can get on it later in case I lose the link, whatever. And the guy behind me is like freaking out because apparently I'm taking too long. And I was
Mm.
literally probably checking out for maybe like 2 minutes total. Like that's how long it took from like the beginning to the end. Okay. And in this instance, I could feel myself. I was so uncomfortable because
Mm.
this person behind me needed something very urgently, needed something,
Needed
right?
those leggings immediately.
He was buying a gift card for someone. Okay. He was buying a gift card for someone. And this is not for me to say that he is not valid, he doesn't exist, right? Because that's not the case either. However, I felt myself wanting to, one, rush,
Mhm.
two, not ask the questions that I
Mm.
needed to ask, which was literally the entire point of me going to this store was to figure out how to get a discount. Also buy cute Lululemon clothes. But the number one thing was to figure out how to set this up. Right. And
Yeah.
so, but I'm in line checking out and I can feel myself not wanting to ask the question because I feel like I'm taking too long because the person behind me is agitated.
Mm.
Okay. And so I could feel myself wanting to apologize, but I didn't because I have enough awareness about this at this point that I could feel all those things going on and not do it because it's something that I'm conscious of working on. However, past Maggie would have one, not asked the question. That was literally the entire reason I went to the store. And two, would have apologized to the guy behind me.
Mm.
And I was thinking about this after, and my sister and I were talking about it, and I was like, isn't that just crazy? Like I told her, I was like, I was very intentional about not rushing and not just stepping to the side and not,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, I was like, I exist. I am here in line paying for something from this store, asking a question from the person who's the person who can answer my question. I
Mhm.
deserve to be here. Right? Like I deserve to be here just as much as the person behind me, and I'm sorry you didn't make it in line ahead of me to buy your gift card, but like you can wait 30 seconds, it's going to be okay. I don't need to apologize for just being here.
And
So,
that
yeah.
is undoing the fucking work mentally. Okay, so
Yeah.
what Maggie just walked you through, that is called when people are like, I'm doing the work, to work, that's the
That's
work.
the work.
That's the work. And then
Right.
the reward is that you walk out of that fucking store and you didn't compromise who you were to take up space and to take the time and to get what you needed. Because what would have happened is if you would have gone back to your old pathways, right? Old Maggie would have turned around, noticed that the guy was agitated, and been like, so sorry, like, here, you want to go quick? Like, it's going to be a minute for me. And then you would have walked out and maybe you would have thought about it. Maybe you didn't, but you would have been like, "Oh, like, come on." Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Whereas you walked out and you still, because there's still work to always do, you're like, I felt it coming up inside of me. Everyone knows that feeling when you feel something bubbling up inside of you of, oh my gosh, I'm taking too long, or I'm going to inconvenience them, or this or that. I think a lot of people, especially who have more like socially anxious type feelings, definitely feel that. And so that bubble coming up inside of you. And you didn't, though, because you didn't need to. And here's the thing, here's the work. The more times that you do that, even though it's not second nature to you yet, it's not. You felt it all coming up. You knew it was happening, but you chose to stay in alignment with yourself and get what you needed to get done, right? The more you do that, the more second nature that's going to be,
Mhm.
right? And so you're moving towards that. And that's when people that's the work. That's it. When people say they're working on themselves mentally, that's what you mean. It's taking inventory of these things that you want to, change or embellish or, add on to or build yourself into the person. Well, it starts by getting curious. And then it also starts by, you probably heard somewhere, Maggie, to take your time, to slow down, to not compromise yourself. You did the work of I do exist, period. And I exist enough to ask the question and wait for the response. You know what I mean? And that person, like, it also makes you think about our society in general because of, I love where our podcast stands as a brand, but specifically in the sense of, is that where we're heading? That people don't have 2 minutes to wait for the person in front of them? And I'm not saying anything about the guy. He could have just been in a rush. Maybe he was late to a birthday party or who knows. Like, there are definitely times in my life where I'm like, I gotta go. Everyone get out of my
Mm.
way. You know what I mean? Like I catch myself doing that too. But then it makes you think like, is that where we're heading as a society that we're so go, 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 go? Like I was telling Maggie, I was talking to my therapist this week about this concept of living your life in fast forward mode. You're catching glimpses of the footage, but everything is so crazy that it's wild. It's also really funny because I can even notice that we're talking slower right now. And we usually talk so fast, but we're just that way. But these concepts, like they deserve the slowed down version because they're important. Like that's important. And there is no feeling for any of you listening, and I have just come upon this probably this last year where I've truly like, I'm really figuring out who I am, like genuinely. And there is no feeling like living in alignment with who you are and acting accordingly no matter where you go. So if you're walking into a store or you're sitting with your family, or you're sitting with your friends, or you're sitting with strangers, or you're meeting with business partners, when you are sure or full of yourself, there's no feeling like it. Uh, There's not. And it's as simple as meeting with someone to discuss business who maybe is a really kind of like a reach for you, right? Sitting across the table from someone really who maybe you admire and you look up to versus staying who you are in the Lululemon store for 2 minutes and asking the questions, because that Lululemon store moment, you forcing yourself to stay in alignment with yourself, is practice for when you go to that fucking meeting.
Yeah,
And
Meg. Yeah, it is.
you know what I mean? It
Yep.
is. You're
Yeah.
forming that.
I
And
feel
so
like I say that
I
every episode. I'm like talking about how something is practice. So
always. It also
yeah,
is in alignment with you being a basketball coach.
practice.
When you want to, yeah, practice. I don't want to say practice makes perfect because we don't like perfect, but practice like 100%. Um, and whoever is listening to this are probably like, whoa, I just expected them to be like, don't apologize, don't apologize. But it's hard to just change a habit or to change something that you're so used to doing if you don't know why you're changing it.
Mhm.
It's not your why, again, with anything, your why is not big enough.
Mhm.
You're not just going to stop saying sorry all of a sudden. There has to be a reason. And that reason is probably that you want to be more confident. You probably want to stand with your shoulders higher. You probably want to, speak clearer and articulate in a different way. I think even something as simple as like when you meet someone for the first time, I'm so cognizant of how I shake someone's hand now and looking them in their eyes. Like they all go hand in hand, literally. hand in I didn't I didn't plan that. That was good though. Like that's a real thing. And it also yeah, can you speak to that? And then I think I want to share a little baby tangent of a story that is slightly off, but not far enough that I think it's going to be worth it for our listeners to hear.
Okay. Um, yeah, it's everything is connected, right? Okay. So how you talk is going to affect how you show up. It's going to affect like how you be, right? It's going to affect how other people act around you. It's going to affect how other people perceive you. And it's then in turn going to affect like opportunities and how your life goes and things like that, right? And so if you notice something about yourself, like the fact that you apologize all the time for everything, and you want to change that, we have to connect it to, like you said, other things than just, I want to stop apologizing, right? Because if it only is, I want to stop apologizing, then it's very easy for it to turn into just beating yourself up when you notice yourself apologizing, instead of looking forward and being like, I don't want to apologize unnecessarily so often because the future version of me who has these opportunities or does this or lives in this place or whatever doesn't do that.
Mhm.
Right. And so it helps us not beat ourselves up and come from this place of like punishment. Right. And it helps us in turn come from a place of like the future. And I like to use the image of like reaching my hand out and pulling someone else up. You have to do that with yourself too, right? Think about your future self reaching out with their hand to pull you closer
Ooh,
towards
that's
them,
good.
right?
Yeah,
And so
so
you
good.
have to connect whatever it is that you want to change to something like that, that maybe it's your future self that does or doesn't do, right? For that sense of support and that sense of encouragement, and to not come from a place of just punishment and beating yourself up and things like that,
Mhm.
because that's not how we make change, right? You can't
No.
make change from a place of hating yourself or just feeling like you're wrong or something like that. Like you might be able to make short-term change from that place, but it's not going to last.
Maggie, you're literally describing everyone's struggle with weight 100%. Everyone's struggle with their health,
Yep.
right? Like the parallel of that is exactly the same. It's going to be short-term change. Your why, your reasoning is not big enough.
Mhm.
It's not, again, we need to just like, we keep talking about t-shirts, but like we are so, our message is so focused on something being sustainable. We're not here to have trends. Like there's even a trend and there's nothing wrong with it, but there's like a trend that goes around a lot on like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube of like being that girl or that person, right? And like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like you're going to be that girl for 2 weeks, okay? Cuz all you're doing is short little trendy things and you're not actually changing, doing the work, the real work of who you are. And that's not to discourage anyone because I got caught up in that for a really long time. But what we're saying about the over apologizing ties into so many different things. It's how do we, as Maggie's famous words, move towards what you're trying to do. And what you're really trying to do, the sorry is the symptom, if you will, of the prevention, which is I want to be full of myself and sure of myself so that I don't compromise who I am. I don't apologize. And the little story I want to tell is not necessarily something to do with apologizing, but it is something to do with we're essentially trying to fit in, right? So when we're apologizing, we're trying to be socially acceptable to people, right? So we feel when we're doing something and they're, you know, even if they're not annoyed, we feel like they are, right? So, for example, when I bartend every now and again, I started at a new place and there is a guy there who you can just tell, like, I don't want to be left alone with him. Like, I just get weird vibes. And one of the employees was saying to me, this is an example of, if you want to act in alignment, it's not always easy because it's not always going to be the social norm. So this person that works there was quote unquote warning me about this person and saying that he can be a little creepy. He's going to try and take you downstairs to show you where things are, but like he's really like trying to be weird, like, and like laughing, like they're like laughing about it. And they're like,
That's
but
not
don't,
funny. I don't think
here
that's funny.
we go.
Sorry.
And so, there we go. So the person telling me was like, but don't worry, he's harmless. Ha ha ha. The entire time he's laughing, cracking up. And I could tell he was just getting uncomfortable because no part of me was laughing. I didn't let out one chuckle. And at the very end, talk about being in alignment with yourself. I had to say, I actually don't find that funny at all. Um, Thank you for the heads up. I will never be alone. One, I probably wouldn't have been anyways because I'm very aware of myself in that way. But two, please don't repeat this story to a younger person like and laugh it off. You know what I mean? So it's not always easy to be that person because you don't, like, for example, I even noticed it in my head while it was happening. I knew I needed to keep a straight face and not let out any laugh. One, because it wasn't funny, but two, because I would be compromising myself to make the moment lighter. And the moment didn't need to be lighter. It wasn't me. That should not have been funny, period, to anyone. And so when you think about this and you take this concept somewhere else, sometimes it's really awkward to stay within yourself. It's not always, you may not always be the majority. Unfortunately, for our society right now, I think it'll change with time. We don't have a ton of healthy adults who are full of themselves. And that's not any diss to anyone. That is a lot of trauma and societal norms and family systems and generational shit. And like, we don't have in my opinion, at least, I don't believe the majority is healthy, functioning adults right now. And that's going to change. And our brand and other brands and other people and, resources, and the more we know, it's changing that. But it's not the norm yet. So if you're someone like us who's forward thinking and trying to, improve yourself and you're super self-aware, you're becoming more self-aware, I don't want to set you up for failure by making it seem like it's always going to feel great. Sometimes it feels really awkward because sometimes you're alone in that world. Um, just know that you're not collectively.
Yeah, I would say for me that every time I am practicing, right, one of these things, or I'm doing the work actively, it does not feel good at all. Nothing about it feels good.
Mhm.
And the only time it feels good is after I have had like a successful attempt of like whatever it is,
Mm.
right? Like with the Lululemon story, I would consider that successful because I stayed, I was present, I didn't, just step to the side or become smaller or apologize, right? And so after that, it felt good. But during it, it did not feel good. And
Ooh.
all of the times I've been in that situation before did not feel good.
Mhm.
Right. And so I think that's an important topic that you brought up because we have just been conditioned to believe that everything's easy and we're supposed to be happy all the time and we're supposed to feel good all the time, and that's just not reality, right?
Mhm.
Especially if you are becoming a conscious human and are really intentional about the person that you are and your actions and your words. And like you said, if you're on that path with us of wanting to better yourself and you just, learn more things and wake up is like the trendy term right now for it. Um, it's uncomfortable and it sucks a lot of the time. And that is okay. That's good, right? Because we can't experience the highs without the lows if we don't have contrast,
Love
right?
that.
And we cannot improve without discomfort,
Mhm.
right? And that can be It could be emotionally, it could be mentally in a situation like my story. It could be physically in the gym. Think about like if you're trying to grow your muscles, you literally cannot do that unless
Without
you
breaking.
tear them,
Mm,
and that hurts. And then you're sore, and then they grow back stronger. And then you're like, wow, look how strong I am.
mhm,
Right. But you're not like, wow, look how strong I am. I didn't have to do any work. That's
mhm.
just not
Ooh, a
how
great
it
analogy.
goes. That's not how it
That's a great
goes.
analogy. Yeah. Also, I want to say to anyone listening, any of you who are listening to us talk right now, YouTube, podcast, on a reel, anywhere, you just listening to us means that you are like us.
Hmm.
I want that to be clear. I don't want anyone to, if you are listening to a podcast or you are watching a YouTube video, you have an interest in improving something. We're not a comedy podcast. We're not a entertain. I mean, we're entertaining, sure, but
Come on, we're funny sometimes.
we're funny sometimes, but like we're valuable. We're relatable, and so if you are listening to this, I want to speak to you for a second in the sense that you're already doing the work.
Hmm.
This is the work. Like Maggie and I, like Maggie, even one of my favorite stories you've ever shared on the podcast was when you were in a transition from traditional training and you took a job at where Kohl's, was it Kohl's or Gap?
Oh, Gap. Yeah.
Stocking shelves, right? Or packaging orders.
Yep.
And you would just listen to podcasts on a loop.
Hmm.
This is the work. You listening to us talk right now, you're doing the work. So I don't want anyone to be like, well, I'm just not, maybe that's not meant for me. Maybe that's not. You're already doing it by listening to a podcast. So I just wanted to like take a moment for that because this is how it goes. You do a little bit of work and you dip your toes in, and then you keep going, and then you embellish, and then you this and that. And then the work is hard, and you're like, why the heck am I doing this? And then you have moments like Lululemon where you go in and you leave, and you're like, God, I feel really good about who I am. And that there's no feeling like that when you're proud of who you are. Like I literally said the other day, it was in therapy. I had a really beautiful therapy session this week, so I'm referencing it twice. But I said to my therapist, like, I've done so much heavy lifting in terms of a lot of my stuff, right? We all have a lot of stuff usually. And I've done a lot of the heavy lifting for that. And I'm starting to enjoy some of the fruits of that labor, if you will, in the sense that I could confidently say over our session that I am so proud of who I am, genuinely. I may not love every bit of me, right? There's things I always want to improve on and areas that I question and I doubt, but I genuinely love the person that I'm turning into. And it's an incredible feeling. And that's why sometimes I hate like self love because it just doesn't cover what self love really is. You know what I mean? Um, where self love is truly you fall in love with yourself and you work on things that you maybe aren't as crazy about.
Yeah. We can tie that back into a couple things. One, last week's episode. Crap. What was I going to tie it into? Oh, the thing
Go back and listen
was,
no matter what, but
yeah. Um, the hardest thing, the thing you don't want to do, is
mm,
probably the thing that you need to do. Right. So if we want to talk about love and apologizing with that context, okay,
mm,
think about someone else that you love. Okay. You love someone else. If you truly love them, I feel like healthy parenting, if you think of like healthy parenting, that's like the perfect example of this, right? You're a kid and your parent tells you, no, you can't do that, right? And your instinct is, well, you don't love me. And it's like, no, actually, they're telling you can't do that because that's out of your best interest, which is them loving you,
mhm,
right? And so we have to do that with ourselves too,
mm,
which means to show ourselves the most love is not usually going to be the easy path. It's not usually
mhm,
going to be the one that just brings instant gratification. It's not the one that is, the simplest or right in front of you. If you're going to show yourself love, it means doing the right thing for you, right? The
mm,
thing that's going to be like result in the best outcome in the long run. It doesn't mean what's easiest right now, right? And so if it comes to over apologizing, allowing yourself to just constantly apologize and constantly feel bad for taking up space, or feel bad for asking questions about the menu, or feel bad for asking a question to your teacher, allowing yourself to do that over and over and over is not actually loving yourself in the highest way, because you're just taking the easy way out,
Oh my
right? Like,
gosh.
if you want to show yourself the most love, stand up for yourself, right?
Mm,
Make yourself better. And that doesn't mean that we have to constantly be improving and nothing can ever be good and I
of
can't
course.
be content with where I am, because that's also important,
Mm,
right? But when you become aware of something where you're like, maybe this is just the easy way out,
mm.
the more we continue to just allow ourselves to do that, the less and less love we're actually showing ourselves.
I think that was the most beautiful. It wasn't even a tangent, but it was like such a beautiful way of putting it. And we both agree on that so much in the sense that it's it's not always the easiest way, and the vices or the habits that we've created are not always within our best interest. They're just the easiest quick fix that we can think of. And I am going to say something a tiny bit ballsy, but I have to, and it's the truth. For me, is that the quick fixes of not there's anything wrong with treating ourselves, but like going and like spending the money or getting the crazy lattes or using the vapes or using the vapes. You can tell I don't vape because I just said one of the most fucking uncool things you could have ever heard. Anyone listening who was under the age of 21 just turned off this podcast because I said using the vapes. We have just lost all of our teenage listeners, and we have a few.
That's fine.
Guys, come back. I didn't mean it. Okay, just stop using the vapes. Anyways, we're getting more and more giggly on this podcast. I love it. Those quick fixes though of going and slamming the beers on the weekends and living for the weekends and drowning out with the alcohol and the weed and the this and the that, like you got to get curious about why you're doing that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like you want to put in the work, but you don't want to do the hard work. And listen, I get it. Start small. Okay. Start small. Start by just getting curious about it. What happens? Okay. So I'm going to give a little lesson today. And then I feel like, whoa, like this was an amazing episode. And then Maggie, if you have anything you want to conclude with, please do.
Cool.
But I'm going to do a little baby psych lesson. Okay. About behavior.
I'm ready.
So when we are going to, I don't want to say change a behavior, but that's essentially what you're doing. So when I was in the school psych position, every kid in school, all the teachers and everyone would say they're having behaviors, their behavior problem, their behavior. Like that's like if you work in a school, you're like, like that's exactly what happens. Behaviors in life too, though, other people, behaviors, right? Well, when you're a psychologist or you're going in with that lens, that means nothing to me. I have no idea what that behavior is, right? You're just saying behaviors, which usually is just AKA it's annoying me, make it stop. That's essentially what people want. We do that for ourselves. You have behaviors, right? You're just, what's the word? Displaying behaviors of this, that, and the third, right? And you want to change them. Well, in order to change them, it's not something that you can just snap your fingers and do, or every kid in every school would be functioning and totally regulated and it would be like a movie, right? The reason why it's difficult to change a behavior is that we don't do the actual process of what that can be. So the word that I used before, it's known as it's known as the ABCs for behavior change. A lot of people will do it if you're in any kind of therapy. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is a great way to change habits, or if you are struggling with an addiction to alcohol or vape or weed, whatever, like CBT, someone who specializes in that is perfect for you. Little side note. ABCs, though, of behavior is the concept that the antecedent is the A. So antecedent is everything that becomes before the behavior is done, right? So we can use it for over apologizing. The behavior is apologizing. That's what you keep doing. What happens beforehand? Does someone give you a weird look? Do you get a thought? Do you get a trigger? Like, what is the antecedent? You have to figure that out. And then afterwards, after the behavior is distributed, there's the consequence. That's the C of this. What happens after that? Is something reinforced, right? Does this happen? Like, you have to get really curious about the whole picture before you can start to wonder about the behavior. So that was just like a little side note that our behaviors are much more complex than we lead on. They're not typically just like, I do this for no reason and da da da. Like, you do it for a reason. And if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, Maggie and I can follow up on like some more of like the neuroscience behavior type stuff of it in the future. Um, but start with just getting curious about what happens before and what happens after.
I am so happy you shared that, because my like, I want to know all the information brain was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm
Something
learning all
new.
these new things, you know? Um, so I know that other people who, like to know all the details
Nerdy
enjoyed
like
that
that.
too. So
Yeah.
thank you. But going off of that, everything you do serves you in some way, right? Is like the simple way to put it. Everything you do serves you in some way. So
Mm-hmm.
the way it serves you might not always be positive. It might not always be negative, and it might not always be what you think, right? Okay. For example, staying up late at night, right? If you stay up late at night and scroll your phone, you're like, well, I don't know why I do this. It's just a habit. I can't do it, right? Well, for me, when I used to stay up late at night and scroll on my phone, it was serving me because it allowed me to not wake up on time in the morning and take care of myself, which then allowed me to say that I gave it my best, but I actually wasn't giving my best effort, and therefore I couldn't be upset with myself. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so how hard is that to
Exactly.
say? Right. How hard
Oh
is that
my.
to say? To be like, I am doing this thing because it's very self-destructive, and therefore I, can't fail if I don't give my best effort. But that's what I mean when I say everything is serving you,
That's so good.
right?
Oh my
Everything
God.
is serving you. So if you want to change something, really dig deep, figure out how it's serving you, right? And whatever it is that you don't want to look at, it's probably the thing, right? And like you
You
said,
have to
like,
look at.
yeah, that's probably the thing. And find someone who specializes in, like you said, like the behavior change therapy, or
Yeah, it's called cognitive behavioral
yeah,
therapy,
cognitive
specifically
behavioral
for behavior.
therapy. Or there's a lot of just like coaches that can help you with this. Or if you want to be brave and do it yourself, go ahead, journal it out. But
Yeah.
everything is serving you. And if we can find the root of that, it's a lot easier to change.
So much easier. And it's encouraging. And then you know that other people, like even just the way that we talk, you listening to our words right now, that's comforting in and of itself. Like what you said today, Maggie, like your vulnerability of admitting one to yourself and then two to a few thousand people who hear our podcast to say, I feel guilty for existing.
Yep.
That that is so hard to say. And it's really hard to admit to yourself. And you're so right with anything, the scrolling, the this, that it's really numbing out essentially, right? Or the over apologizing is a form of it's a symptom of not dealing with the stuff. And I just want to say this. I don't know exactly how this is all going to play out, but I want to just speak it into existence and I want you guys to hear it too. But this episode has a lot of themes in some ways. And one of them, what I was saying to you all specifically about me, my idea of being a big thinker, a systems level thinker, is that a lot of things in our society are not being dealt with at a systems level. And we're dealing with the symptoms of those things. And Maggie and I don't know how that's going to play into our brand exactly, maybe just the way we speak, but it's becoming very, very clear that we are a back to basics root approach type people. And it's really, really fun and exciting and exhilarating to play that theme out with all of you listening every week.
Yeah. I love that you and I together have come to that, because that's something that is really big for me in terms of like my coaching and when it comes to health and fitness. And, we can't we cannot make changes or really get any desired result with band-aids, right? That's not how it's going to work. And we have to dig deep to the roots and the foundation and rebuild from there. And so I love that. Like, we are also going there with this
I
because,
think
like,
that's why
it's
regenerative
just,
farming stuck out to me so much.
yeah. Yep.
Very
Very
cool.
cool.
We love you guys. Next week's episode is going to be a follow-up that will blend off beautifully to this. And then we have a few guests coming up in the future. We're so happy you're here with us. And yeah, you're going to see a lot more. If you don't follow us already on social media, we are about to really take things up a notch there. So come follow us on all the platforms soon, but at the Meg and Maggie podcast, don't forget to, I know Maggie tells you at the end, but rate, review, subscribe. We'll be on YouTube soon. It's an exciting season for us.
You will find us everywhere.
Everywhere. You'll be sick of our faces eventually, but you will love us all the more. Okay. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.